Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. Her name was Alara Vaughn, and at 29, she never imagined her father would break her heart in front of 100 strangers. To the world, Marcel Vaughn was a respected property tycoon, a man whose name was printed in glossy magazines and etched on the brass plaques of city buildings. To Alara, he was a hero, the man who had taught her how to ride a bike on Sycamore Lane, the one who carried her on his shoulders through summer carnivals, who called her my North Star during her nursing school graduation. So when he stood at the grand ballroom of the Rutherford Club on his 60th birthday and said, loud enough for the chandeliers to tremble, "You're not my biological child. That's why I left you out of the will," something inside her cracked, like porcelain hitting marble. The crowd fell silent. Champagne flutes hovered midair. Forks stopped clinking against dessert plates. Alara sat motionless at table 14. Her breath trapped somewhere between disbelief and humiliation. She remembered the house she grew up in, a white-columned colonial with a robin's egg blue front door, the smell of fresh paint, the sound of her mother singing floating down the halls. She remembered how her father showed up for every spelling bee, every scraped knee, every holiday play, cheering louder than anyone. "You've got your mother's kindness and my grit," he used to say with pride. And now, before colleagues, investors, and family, he stripped that identity from her with a single sentence. Everything had started unraveling 6 years earlier when Leora Vaughn, her mother, was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive cancer. Marcel had dropped everything, board meetings, investor calls, press conferences, to sit beside her bed. He brought her soup in paper cups, slept in uncomfortable plastic chairs, rubbed her feet through the nights when pain was unbearable. When she died 3 years later, something in him dimmed. He buried himself in work, shutting out the world. Their Sunday dinners turned to once-a-month meetings, then to quick phone calls, then to silence. Alara didn't push. She thought he just needed time. She poured herself into finishing nursing school, convinced he would eventually return to the man who raised her. But grief had carved something hard and cold in him. She still remembered the first time she met Celine, the woman who would become his second wife. It was at a fundraising gala for a children's cancer ward where Alara worked as a volunteer. Celine was elegant, poised with a polished business degree and a quiet but unsettling confidence. She had a son, Keelan, who was 25 and studying finance. Within months, Celine had moved into the house Alara grew up in. 9 months later, she and Marcel married. Suddenly, the family that had been 2 became 4, and everything shifted. Keelan began shadowing Marcel at the office, walking through the marble lobby of Vaughn Holdings as if he had always belonged there. "He's got the head for this business," Marcel had told Alara when she asked why Keelan was now attending meetings she had never been invited to. "He speaks the language of real estate." Alara, a freshly licensed pediatric nurse, didn't speak that language, but she smiled politely, telling herself it was good her father had company. That illusion shattered the day she returned home to find her childhood bedroom emptied and painted gray. Her books, trophies, and posters were gone. Her sanctuary turned into a sterile home office. No warning, no explanation. "It's just a room," Celine had said lightly when Alara confronted her in the hallway. "You're an adult now. You don't need a shrine to your teenage years." It stung more than she admitted. Then came the money conversation. One rare evening over dinner, Marcel had sat across from her, his face carved in stone. "You're nearly 30, Alara. You should start managing your loans and expenses on your own. I can't keep covering them." He said it as if he were talking about a stranger. She nodded slowly, her chest tight, swallowing words she didn't dare speak. Days later, searching for a family photo album, she stumbled on stacks of papers in his study. Bank statements in red ink, investor letters warning of unstable markets, memos about falling property values. When she asked him, he had snapped. The business is fine. You stick to treating sick children and let the adults handle this. Elara wanted to believe him. Perhaps she even did, until Celine started planning Marcel's 60th birthday party with unnerving precision. Just bring yourself and a thoughtful gift, Celine had said with a glass-sharp smile. Marcel is making some important decisions. This night will be remembered. Elara tried not to overthink the remark. Instead, she poured her heart into her gift, a navy blue, leather-bound family history album filled with photographs and handwritten notes from generations of Vaughns. She included a DNA test kit just for fun, hoping it might spark a laugh and maybe pull her father back into the warmth of memory. The night of the party arrived like a storm. The Rutherford Club glittered with crystal chandeliers, blue orchids on every table, silver candelabras throwing light like stars. The city's elite were there, partners, rivals, society columnists. When Elara arrived, Celine greeted her at the door in a sequined gown, Keelan by her side in a tailored suit. "Interesting dress choice," Celine said, her eyes sliding over Elara's simple navy cocktail dress. "You'll find your seat with the cousins. Table 14. Her tone made it clear Elara did not belong at the main table. She swallowed the sting and scanned the room until her gaze landed on Marcel, seated at the head table, Celine's hand draped over his arm. When Elara presented him with the gift, he merely smiled, tight and polite. "Thank you for coming, Elara," he said, setting the package aside without opening it. "Enjoy yourself." No hug, no warmth, only the sound of a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Dinner blurred into a haze of clinking silverware and forced laughter. From her corner table, Elara watched Keelan lean in to whisper into her father's ear, both of them laughing quietly. They never looked her way. One of her cousins leaned across the table. "Why aren't you sitting with your father?" Elara just shrugged, her throat too tight to explain. After dessert, Celine stood gracefully and tapped her glass. "Family and friends," she said with a smile too wide. "Please raise your glasses for the man of the hour." Marcel rose, his posture regal, his smile practiced. "Milestones make a man think about legacy," he began. "About what we leave behind. About blood." Then his gaze found hers across the room, and the words that followed tore her world in two. "Elara, it's time we tell the truth. You are not my biological daughter. That is why your name is not in the will." The ballroom froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Someone's fork clattered to the floor. Elara felt every eye on her, hot and unrelenting. Across the room, Celine's lips curved into the faintest victorious smile. Marcel's voice went on, calm and cruel. "Leora and I married when she was already expecting. She confessed the truth to me years later. I chose to raise Elara, but the Vaughn legacy must remain in the bloodline. Keelan will take over Vaughn Holdings." The words were final. A toast was made. 100 hands lifted their glasses. Elara rose from her chair, her legs trembling, and walked toward the head table, her heels echoing against the marble floor like a drumbeat. At the head table, the world narrowed to her father's face. Elara reached for the gift she had brought, the navy leather album now sitting unopened beside a tower of champagne glasses. Her hands shook as she unwrapped it. "I thought you might want to explore our family history," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "But it seems you've already decided to rewrite it." One by one, she tore the pages in half, the soft rip of paper slicing through the stunned silence. Bits of photographs and family, trees, floated down onto the white tablecloth like ashes. Gasps rose from the tables around her. Someone dropped a wine glass. It shattered on the marble floor. "Elara!" Marcel's voice finally cracked, but she didn't look at him. She turned on her heel and walked out of the ballroom, her chin high even though her heart felt like glass in her chest. Not a single person called after her, not even her father. Outside, the The summer air was warm, but she shivered as if standing in the middle of winter. The valet handed her car, keys silently, his eyes downcast. She drove home with tears blurring the road, pulling over twice just to breathe. What had he done? And why? Why now? Her phone buzzed all night with texts. Are you okay? What happened? I'm so sorry. She ignored them all until, at 3 a.m, her cousin Theron called. Elara almost let it ring out, but instinct made her answer. Are you safe? Theron's voice was soft, almost maternal. I'm fine, Elara whispered, though her throat burned. Do you think it's true? What he said? There was a pause on the line. Then Theron spoke with conviction. No, you look exactly like him, Elara. The same dimples, the same stubborn jaw. I don't know what game he's playing, but don't believe him. After she hung up, Elara couldn't sleep. She called in sick to the hospital the next morning, sat cross-legged on her living room floor, and pulled out every old family album she could find. There she was, baby Elara in Marcel's arms, toddler Elara on his shoulders, schoolgirl Elara holding up her spelling bee trophy while he clapped proudly in the background. Their smiles matched. Their eyes matched. The man who had raised her with such love had chosen to humiliate her publicly. Why? Desperate for answers, Elara drove to the small town where Mara, her late mother's best friend, still lived. Mara had been like an aunt to her, present at every birthday party, every graduation. When Elara asked if her mother had been pregnant before marrying Marcel, Mara's brows furrowed. Absolutely not. Your parents dated for years before marrying. I was at the hospital the day you were born. Marcel cried more than your mother did. The words hit Elara like a wave. Then why would he say I'm not his? She asked, her voice breaking. Mara's expression darkened. Because he's not the same man anymore. Losing your mother broke something in him. And Celine? She's made it worse. Have you looked into Von Holding's finances lately? Elara shook her head. Why would I? Because your mother left something for you, Mara said gravely. And if I know Celine, she'll do anything to keep it out of your hands. Those words lit a fire inside Elara. That evening, she reached out to Jasper Lane, a retired investor who had worked with Marcel for decades. Over black coffee in his garden, Jasper didn't hold back. Your father's been making reckless decisions, bad projects, high-risk loans. I pulled my investments months ago. Elara leaned forward. Did my mother leave a trust? Jasper nodded. Yes. Eamon Wren, your mother's lawyer, handled it. You should talk to him before it's too late. The next morning, Elara drove to Lake Oren, where Eamon lived in a quiet lakeside cottage. He welcomed her with a weary smile and a thick stack of papers. Your mother left you a trust fund, he confirmed gently. $12 million. You inherit in full when you turn 30, or earlier if you marry. Your father was the trustee, but I've had concerns for a while. Elara's breath caught. Concerns? He's been borrowing against the trust, Eamon said, using the returns to patch Von Holding's losses. It's technically legal, but deeply unethical. Elara sat back, stunned. In that moment, she realized Marcel's birthday announcement had never been about biology. It was about power and control. Armed with the trust documents, Elara contacted Marcus Hale, a sharp trust litigation lawyer recommended by Eamon. Together, they spent hours combing through every statement, every transfer. If we take this to court, Marcus said, your father could face fraud charges. Are you ready for that? Elara took a slow breath. I don't want revenge. I just want the truth and my dignity back. A week later, she walked into Von Holding's glass-walled boardroom. Celine tried to block her path. You can't just walk in here, she hissed. Elara didn't flinch. I can and I will. This company has been running off money that was never yours. She pushed past her stepmother, documents clutched tight, and faced Marcel across the polished table. He looked older, his shoulders heavy. What now, Elara? He asked wearily. I know I hurt you. You didn't just hurt me. she said, sliding the papers toward him. You tried to erase me, but I'm still here, and I'm taking back what belongs to me. For an hour, Elara laid out her terms. Marcel would resign as trustee immediately. All misappropriated funds would be repaid with interest. A public statement retracting his claims about her paternity would be released within a week, and he would permanently relinquish any control over the properties and assets designated in the trust. Celine sat stone-faced, her fingers digging into the arms of her chair, while Keelan stared at the table, pale and silent. Marcel said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, with a sigh that sounded like defeat, he nodded. I'll agree to your terms, he murmured. You were always my daughter, Elara. His voice cracked. I lost sight of what mattered. Elara didn't soften. Mom never did, she said quietly. That's why she protected me even after she was gone. 6 months later, Elara stood in a sunlit hall at the inaugural ceremony of the Leora Vaughan Foundation, a scholarship program for nursing students. Her mother's name was carved into the marble plaque at the entrance, shining in the morning light. The trust was now fully restored under independent management. Elara had purchased a modest but warm townhouse near the hospital where she worked, filling it with framed photographs and her mother's favorite wildflowers. She had declined any formal role at Vaughan Holdings, but agreed to serve as a board advisor to ensure transparency and ethical reform. Keelan, humbled, was now running operations under strict financial oversight. As for Marcel, he retired quietly, his once pristine reputation tarnished, but not entirely destroyed. He and Elara met for dinner every few weeks now. Quiet meals without grand apologies, only small gestures, slow attempts at rebuilding something fragile. The pain he caused would never vanish completely, but Elara had found peace, not from the money or the public vindication, but from reclaiming her truth. The broken pieces of her life had not been glued back together. They had been rearranged into something stronger, sharper, and more beautiful. She had her mother's spirit, her own hard-won freedom, and a future she had chosen for herself. As she stepped out of the hall that day into the golden light, she whispered to herself, "This is my legacy now." That evening, Elara returned to the townhouse she now called home. The windows glowed softly against the twilight. The kitchen smelled of fresh basil from the little plant she'd started growing on the sill. She set down her bag and sat at the small wooden table by the window, staring out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed, a message from Marcel. "Dinner tomorrow? Just us." For a moment, she didn't reply. Then she typed back, "Yes, but not to talk about the company. Just us." Later, she curled up on the couch and opened her mother's journal again. There was an entry she had missed before. If grief ever takes Marcel away from himself, remind him of the girl who made him laugh until his stomach hurt. Remind him of the girl he taught to ride a bike and told was his North Star. Tears welled in Elara's eyes, but this time they felt different, not heavy, not bitter. She realized that forgiving her father wouldn't erase what he had done, but it might free her from carrying the weight of his choices forever. She whispered into the quiet room, as if speaking to her mother, "I think I'm ready to try." The next evening, she met Marcel at a quiet restaurant on the edge of town, far from the society pages and boardrooms. He was already seated when she arrived, no business suit, just a simple shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, a man stripped of the armor he used to wear. When she sat down, he didn't start with excuses or defenses. He simply said, "I'm sorry, Elara." The words were raw, almost broken. "For everything. For letting grief turn me into someone you didn't recognize. For letting Celine's ambitions cloud my judgment. For forgetting that you were never just my daughter. You were my anchor." Elara's chest ached, but she met his gaze. "I can't forget what happened, Dad. But maybe we can start over." Slowly. For the first time in years, his smile was unguarded, almost boyish. "I'd like that." They ate in companionable silence, and when they left, Marcel offered his arm. She took it not out of duty but by choice. Outside, the night air was cool, the sky scattered with stars. For the first time since that dreadful birthday party, Elara felt light. She wasn't just the girl who had been humiliated in front of a crowd. She wasn't just the heiress reclaiming her trust fund. She was Elara Vaughn, survivor, daughter, woman with a future she had built with her own hands. As they walked to their cars, she thought, this is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of something new. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.